Hello, welcome for Hello, and welcome to Stream Stealers. Thank you for joining me. I'm Mark Peikert, editor-in-chief of Playbill, and today's guest is Rebecca Hall, who is currently on Amazon's Tales from the Loop, 8-episode season. Fantastic. And theatregoers probably know her from her work on Broadway in Machinal in 2014 and the 2017 Atlantic Theater production of Animal, among many, many other credits. So I'm very excited to talk to her. She's a fantastic film and TV actress, obviously, but stage, she's one of my favorite stage performers. And I just hope that we can convince her to do more. So I'm going to bring her on now.
Lost you. Oh, no, I'm back. Oh. Hello.
Hello, Rebecca Hall.
Hello. How are you?
I'm good. I'm very excited to speak to you because, as I said, I'm just a huge fan. And look, Christine is going to be my favorite movie that I never want to watch again.
Yeah, I feel that's quite an accurate way of putting it. I don't know. It does. I could barely bring myself to watch it, having, made it, but and I found it hard because it was very much reliving it. But I have since watched it twice, and actually, it's the filmmaking is just very extraordinary. Actually, it bears a second viewing on that.
I mean, that performance, honestly, is just extraordinary. And the moment near the end where she's doing the puppet show.
Yeah.
And oh my God, I think about that so much because it's so brutal in its depiction of just loneliness and depression. And it says everything without saying anything. And it's one of my favorite scenes in cinema.
Thank you. Yeah, no, I think we're just gotta give all credit to Craig Shilowich who wrote it, because it was kind of an ingenious idea to.
Yeah.
Because one of the things about doing anything about someone who's having mental health issues is how do you access their interiority? How do you access what's going on? Because typically it's, unless you've got a scene with a therapist, they're not talking to people about what's happening in any sort of clear way, or way that might feel like it's really what's going on the inside. So the idea of giving her a puppet show so she could express her unconscious or things that aren't even available to her, I think was really brilliant, and heartbreaking and accurate about her, actually.
I mean, and I was so delighted when I found out there was going to be a movie about Christine Chubbuck, because I had been fascinated by that story for years.
Yeah.
And it's such a little known story, and shockingly, like, it was televised. It was this national story. And like so many women's stories, it's kind of gotten swept under the rug, and fewer people talked about it. And then it became largely forgotten.
Well, it's a difficult, I think it's a very difficult thing for a society to hold. I mean, the act itself was she wanted to upset and shock, and she was clearly so angry and so hurt and so just distraught, and didn't have the right kind of help. And it's the most extreme cry that you can possibly imagine, to inflict it so violently on everyone else like that. And I think it's very difficult to find compassion for that. And but I think that sort of it felt to me important to actually and think about how she could have got to that point and feel sympathetic for that.
Well, I mean, look, I can talk about Christine all day. But you do have a new project, Tales from the Loop, on Amazon.
Tales from the Loop,
yeah. So I'm kind of describing Tales from the Loop, and I want to hear how you describe the show, because it's wonderful, but so difficult to convey. But I'm saying it's a more melancholic Twilight Zone and a more humane or tender Black Mirror.
Yes, that's right. I think that's kind of accurate. It got described to me by the showrunner and Mark Romanek in early days is they were aspiring to something that if Bergman made a sci-fi. Like equal parts, high concepts, high cinematic values, but actually about human problems and constraints, and something very simple actually told through this very high concept lens. And it was a kind of like gripping pitch to me, because I mean, I love Black Mirror and I love high concept drama and all the things that are happening right now in that vein. You know, like Nathaniel came from Legion, for example, which is very like kind of high concept. And I love that sort of thing that sort of challenges my imagination in that way. But there was something so exciting about this, because so often in that sort of world of sci-fi television, the concept is the thing in itself, and there's a sort of cynicism that can be baked into it, which is sort of cool and groovy and dark. And I found this really fascinating because it was daring to be emotional all the way through. And I found that really refreshing, actually. And I think it works because it is all these things, and you are sort of excited by the ideas, but actually at its sort of, the real hook of the show is that it's very emotional and it will move you.
Well, and so for those of you who have not seen Tales from the Loop, everyone is the citizens of Mersa, Ohio, are living in a town built over a box that unleashes the mysteries of the universe.
A box, yes.
A box,
kind of.
A globe, an underground bunker.
I guess it's a gigantic particle collider. So, like, you know, like think about Higgs boson or something like that. If like a Higgs boson particle collider just landed, I should stop right now, out of nowhere, and then got buried under the ground and did strange things to everything that we take for granted about time and space, which if you did subdivide an atomic particle, it could. And then people lived on top of it, and their lives were consistently changed by this fact. And they don't understand why. But, you know, you say all that, but actually it's the same difference as there's more stuff in heaven and earth than is dreamt of in our philosophy. You know, that's the idea, basically. It's like mysterious things can happen in life and we have no understanding why. What if it was just a daily part of life? That, you know, robots.
The first 2 episodes alone, I was like, oh my God, Rebecca Hall's poor character. She really goes through it with her family.
Yeah, Loretta really goes through it. She has a really, really extreme time. But it was quite an appealing, it was quite an appealing character in that I haven't done an awful lot of television. I've done quite a lot of British TV. And it was back in the days when TV wasn't like so long format. So I'd do like a 5-part of something like Parade's End or things like this that I can think of, or Red Riding Energy. And you sort of knew exactly what you were doing. Like all the scripts were there, and the director was the same all the way through. So this was quite interesting because instead of getting all the scripts, I got pitched essentially the character. But the thing that really chimed for me was the idea that it would be her entire trajectory would get, her life would get told indirectly and directly throughout the course of the season, from childhood to adulthood. And so you understand more about her after episode 1. I don't want to give anything away, knowing what happens to her.
I mean, the first episode alone was just like, it's a great first episode of any series, but it's particularly great for this series because it sets you up without beating you over the head with everything, and it leaves you enough room to figure things out on your own.
Yeah, I mean, it really does. It's not heavy-handed in any way. It's an incredibly it leaves an awful lot undisclosed, and it leaves an awful lot mysterious and enigmatic. And I think that's really interesting. Also, it has this very sort of elegant, sort of quiet quality, which I think is quite rare in TV. You know, to tell things. I keep using this word indirect, but it is sort of the word of the show, I'd say, in many ways. Like, you don't, like, Loretta never says what she's feeling. She says what she's feeling through talking about something completely different. And everyone does that, and everyone's very restrained and sort of European in that sense, even though sort of America. It's quite unusual, I think.
So I have to ask, and I'm sure that this is an annoying question, but I was fascinated, and I actually rewound it to watch the scene again. There's a moment in the first episode where you're talking to your son, and he says something to you, and your face, you can see everything collapse, and then a single tear falls down your face.
Uh-huh.
And I was riveted.
With the tear?
With the tear, yes. How do you do one tear?
I don't know. I have a really good one eye leak function. It's been commented on before. Like, it happens a lot. I don't. It just one will start leaking and the other one won't. Of course, this is problematic when you want both to start really going. But I'll often only leak out of one. I'm glad it works.
See, these are the secrets that people can't get in drama school.
I know. It's like, how do you do that? Well, I just got this leaky left eye. No, I don't have a leaky left eye. Please don't put that down for the record.
You know what? We can cut this. It's live, but we can cut it.
It's live. I know. It's too late.
So, look, I'm delighted that you are doing television, because the more Rebecca Hall that I can get into my eyeballs, the better. Neither of them leak, by the way. In case you were worried. But I love you so much on stage, because you are you're such a present actor in anything, but on stage, there's just this really tensile strength that you convey that is just riveting to watch. And the two that I did not see Twelfth Night, unfortunately. I live in Queens, and Brooklyn is just so far.
Yeah, no, I know. It's Bam is a trek. I get it.
But Machinal and Animal both just gorgeous. Gorgeous performances, and both women who are kind of on the verge of, or ultimately tipped over into, being destroyed by the world around them.
Yes, that's true. They both are. Yeah.
So, Machinal first. How did you end up doing this revival of this kind of not well known in America 1920s play?
I like a challenge. Lindsay Turner, the director, approached me about it and said, this is sort of an extraordinary work of American expressionism, and it hasn't, or abstract expressionism, whatever you want to categorize it. I can't remember what exactly she said, but it hasn't been produced on Broadway since its inaugural production in 1929, and I want to do it. And she handed me the play, and I went away and read it, and I was deeply intimidated by it, because it's not like there's no easy access point. A lot of the language is it starts off like a sort of absurdist poem, it's kind of these very staccato lines and nothing's connected, and then you get about 20 pages in and there's, I kid you not, sort of page long stream of conscious monologues, which are kind of, when I sort of have love Samuel Beckett and have read a lot of, and I've toyed around with Happy Days when I was a kid in high school, and I read these monologues. And it reminded me of Beckett, even though it was pre-Beckett, actually. And I was so flabbergasted by that, and the rhythm of it, and the poetry, and this sort of weird repetition. And I was also horrified, because I thought, I don't know how I'm going to learn all this. And then Lindsay said to me, I also want you to speak it at the speed of thought. So no pauses, you just got to keep on plowing straight through it. And then when we got really into rehearsals, she also added the layer of the fact that there would be a bunch of people behind me with choreographed movements that would be timed out with the words that I said. So if I messed up and went back a page, which I did once, I'll be like on this horrible sort of physical loop forever. And so it was, I guess it was, it was a compelling challenge, and it, I loved every second of it. It was really, it was demanding. And the way that the production was staged was on this rather brilliant revolving box, which was essentially which is now sort of like a trendy conceit in theatre, but it was essentially pretty much slowly revolving all the time.
Yeah.
And I would step onto the box at the beginning of the hour-and-a-half show, and I wouldn't get off the box until the end. And I went through 15 costume changes, which all happened on stage, like hidden, like sort of magic quick change stuff, which was thrilling. I mean, it was truly one of the more exciting productions of any theatre that I've ever been involved in.
It's still, that was what, 6 years ago?
Mm-hmm.
Still,
cool. Yeah.
I can't think of any Broadway play, I should say, that technically ambitious.
It was very ambitious, and it was very bold, and it was very unusual, and it wasn't in any way, shape or form naturalistic. So I think a lot of audiences were quite sort of stunned by it. There would always be, I don't know if you have any memory of this, but I honestly can't remember a night that we performed it where there wasn't at least a 3 to 7 second silence before anyone started clapping, because they were so like, I got ready to breathe, which I relate to because I at the time, always needed to breathe as well, I think, by the end of it. I think it didn't really, the production didn't allow you to pause ever. It was, in the same way that her life is just constantly being pummeled essentially until the very end. The experience was like that too, I think, I hope.
Yes, the end stays with me, and I think it was the wedding sequence where you were very rapidly going through the doors and changing costumes that just has stuck with me, and I can see it when I think about it.
No, it was a very good trick. I went into one door, opened one door, and by the time I got to the other door, I was wearing a different outfit. Like, still when I came through the door, it was very clever. I'll never tell anyone how.
Magnets.
It kind of was, actually, yeah.
So then for Machinal, it's Animal, where you have no costume changes, and the stage does not move, and you're on stage the entire time.
I was just on stage the whole time, yeah.
In a tiny box.
Also speaking long monologues. I know. I don't know what my problem is. Yeah.
But
inside the tiny box. This time everyone was in the box with me. Yeah.
Yes, thank God. You were less lonely in Animal.
Kinda.
But, that was such an intense play. So Animal is about a woman who is perhaps going mad. It's unclear where she is on the spectrum of sanity, and we're interacting with her and the people in her life. And was it in the round fully, or was it just either side?
No, it was either side with one, three. No, it was either side. It was either side.
Yeah. And so we're all watching this unfold in real time. And it was so tense watching you going through that story. What was it like doing that with so many people this close to you?
Well, I could see everyone all the time. It was quite brightly lit. So it felt very strangely intimate. Like I'd always feel like I became quite acquainted with whoever was on the first 2 rows, because I'd always be looking at them. And also there was a sort of like a headspace of feeling like, well, she's got a lot of invented people probably in her head. I might as well actually just look at people from time to time and interact with them. But it was, I don't know that it was a really, I loved doing that play, because it's sort of about a very specific sort of psychosis that is hormonally triggered and blah, 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 but there is a sort of mystery to it. And apart from all of that, it is infused with a very specific sort of Black British humour all the way through that I just loved. I loved it. It just felt very real to me and very clear.
And you got to wear the most comfortable stage costume ever. Yeah,
I was in a hoodie and sweats, and a beanie. A beanie hat, no makeup. Yeah. I went to work at, the curtain went up at 7:30. I get in at 7 for the half, zip up my hoodie, walk on stage. It was great.
I hope that you dressed up in like full red carpet attire to go to the theater. and
Of
then
course.
put on.
Of course, full makeup. Then I just removed it all. Yeah, cool.
So I have to ask, because now we're all wearing sweats and hoodies and beanies. What are you, in addition to Tales from the Loop, which everyone should be watching during quarantine, what are you watching during quarantine?
What are we watching? Well, we had to sort of get both mine and Morgan's stuff done. Duty bound. So we watched all of Tales from the Loop, and then we watched Plot Against America first, which is excellent. I have to say, I thought it was so great, and he's incredible in it, as everyone is incredible in it. So that was popular in our household. And what else have we been watching? I'm trying to think. I've been working, I've been editing a movie remotely. So I've been I've been watching things all day and doing that. I've now locked picture, but it's been quite an intense period for me work-wise. I haven't actually stopped. And so I actually get to the end of the day and I have a tendency to want to watch just really sort of comforting, cozy, mind-numbing British reality shows about gardening. That's really been my go-to.
I mean, I've been watching a lot of Supermarket Sweep, the 90s game show where...
No, you have not. Supermarkets with Dale Winton. Was that his name? Dale
Ruprecht.
Dale Ruprecht, that's it.
Yes. It's on Amazon Prime.
No, it isn't. Really? I can't believe that. I remember that. It was such a weird idea. It's just people have to run through a supermarket and shop as quickly as possible, right?
Yes.
Why?
Consumerism.
Oh no, it really is the ultimate. Oh, it's the ultimate game show of consumerism.
Yeah,
I never thought about it. Yes, it was very popular. I remember Supermarket Sweep.
Highly recommend. For
it sounds like that kind of thing. I'm very into like things like Grand Designs. I'll just watch them for hours.
Oh, yeah.
Watch Grand Designs. Fantastic.
I'm delighted that you know what Supermarket Sweep is. Not a lot of people do.
I'm English, these things are seared into the very fabric of our being.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Same. This was the show that I used to watch when I got home from school.
Aha!
Well, thank you so much for joining me today, Rebecca Hall.
Pleasure.
This was a delight, and everyone, please watch Tales from the Loop and gardening shows and Supermarket Sweep
and the Plot Against America.
And the Plot Against America. Well, that's going to be next week. Don't give it away.
Yeah, he's fine. He'll have his moment. That's good.
Also, I have to say, I fell in love with Morgan when I saw him. I think it was Playwrights Horizon's Russian Doll.
Oh, Russian Transport. Yes.
Russian Transport. Yes.
I wish I'd seen that. I'm very jealous.
Oh my God.
Yeah, I wish I'd seen that.
So great.
Yeah.
Fantastic. All right. Well, that is all the time that we have. I'm so delighted that we got to talk today. This was a thrill.
You too. Take care.
You too.
Bye-bye.
And thank you all for watching.
Thank you.